Welcome to another Founder Wisdom podcast. We have Abhinav Chetan with us today. He's the founder at Digital for Nonprofits and Deducated.ai. He's an enabler at abhinavchetan.com if you want to look him out. 12 years at Google, Wharton, educated. Nice to have you here, Abhi. Tell us a bit more about yourself and what you're up to.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me, Charles. It's wonderful to be here. And going through your website, I realized that I couldn't show up without putting in a workout. So I hit the gym and then I showed up to your podcast.
Good job.
Charles, as you've already introduced me. I spent about 12 years at Google. I'd say got really lucky. Got into digital at the time when it was just in its infancy, way back in 2008. And from 2008 to 2020, I got a chance to work with the largest brands in the US and UK and India and saw digital marketing grow from the inside. And that was a really, really transformational experience for me. And while I was at Google, one of the things I really liked to do was to use my 20% or extra time to teach and to work with nonprofits. So those are the two, I'd say, passion points, which then led me to entrepreneurship. Digital for
Right.
nonprofits.
And why leave Google? Because they offer like a nice pay grade, somewhat entrepreneurial company. You've been there for a decade. What prompted you to actually leave Google?
Yeah, it's a question I get asked very often. A lot of people wonder why I left Google to work for nonprofits. And I think, Charles, at some point in time, I realized that while I was doing very well at Google, I was getting promoted quickly. I was getting great opportunities. I ended up working with 5 different teams across different geographies. There was something which told me that there's more to life than this. There's more to life than the next promotion, the next raise, the next geography. I was genuinely deeply seeking purpose. And I think that was a streak which existed in me even when I was in college before I joined Google. And when I started asking that question again and again, over a period of time, I realized that Google did not have the answer. And what had the answer was my urge to enable by offering nonprofits and brands leverage with what I'd learned. And those desires are now manifesting as the brands which you just see. So Digital for Nonprofits works to enable qualified nonprofits digitally, and Digitated.ai works to accelerate GenAI maturity for modern teams. But the core is still the same. I want to be able to contribute meaningfully, and I think offering leverage to institutions and individuals is my purpose.
Right. And what's an enabler? It's like first time I hear that. You help people do stuff. You're like the middleman. What's an enabler?
Yeah. Interesting you use the word middleman. So let me give a couple of examples. With nonprofits, while I was at Google, we used to see a lot of them have the best of tech available at no cost. Google would give ad credits, $10,000 of ad credits per month. Google would give workspace and credits for free, among other things. And Google is not the only company, by the way, which offers these credits to nonprofits. But nonprofits were almost always painfully unaware of the fact that as a nonprofit, they can take this technology. That's step one. So growing awareness in the nonprofit ecosystem about technology grants. The second step is to ensure that they pay attention to digital marketing maturity. I use the word carefully. It's not digital maturity, it's digital marketing maturity. Because for a nonprofit, they only care about two things: spreading mission awareness, and second is fundraising. How can you take tech grants and digital marketing and enable a nonprofit to become self-reliant? And then the, the magic tech came in, GenAI. We got early access to it, and for the past 2.5 years, we've now been taking GenAI directly to nonprofits. I don't know if that answers your question as an enabler. So we work to make nonprofits aware of tech grants. We build digital marketing capability and assets, and then we embed GenAI into their teams. So when you put the three together, it becomes a very powerful self-reinforcing loop.
And are nonprofits founders most of the time business savvy? Because most of them that I spoke with, like they have a good heart, but seems they like the strategy to move the ball forward. Is that like a prejudice or is that the reality?
You'd be surprised. Nonprofit founders have really long-term committed visions. I wish the startup ecosystem had that because we're dedicated. We also end up working with funded startups where a startup wants to do an IPO in 5 years, whereas a nonprofit has been working for 30 years, but is still doing the same thing, but deep, meaningful work. So you're absolutely right. In my conversation with nonprofits over the last 10 years, most of these founders have a really good heart, are obsessed with their mission, but cannot look beyond where's my next fundraise? How do I support, let's say, if it's a childcare program, how do I ensure that I have enough funds to care for these children? Or if it's disaster management, how do I ensure that this city is prepared for the next heat wave? Or if it's a nonprofit based in the arts ecosystem, how do I ensure my next exhibition is successful? So it's interesting to see this paradox that they are aiming for the long term, but their short termism, especially in terms of digital, hurts them all the time. So that's where digital for nonprofits can come in and really change your vision. And in our case, we work with many now.
And don't you need to be for profit to actually be as much impactful as before? I see a lot of social startups nowadays that I'm way more bullish on because it feels that once you have capitalism out the equation, capitalism is this beautiful invention. It's trade. It's you pay me and I give that in return. And asking for stuff for free normally from the heart doesn't tend to scale as well. Are you still bullish on nonprofits? And what about like social startups that are for profit but still have a huge impact on some causes?
Absolutely. It's a very interesting point that you mentioned. So, just so that you know, we are set up as a social enterprise. We are a for profit working with nonprofits. And that is why I'm extremely clear that my target market is not just India, it's the entire world. Anyone who's qualified, and when I say qualified, there's very specific qualification by country for them to be able to acquire tech grants, is someone we can enable. So for me, setting up as a social enterprise which charges money. So it's not that we don't charge money to nonprofits, but of course we don't charge as much as we would charge a for-profit. So that is a clear distinction I want to make. And since we run two brands, we have two different balance sheets. There's Dedicated, which works with startups and MSMEs, and we charge them a different dollar. And then there's Digital for Nonprofits, which works with nonprofits, and we don't charge them as much. So I see this in my day-to-day work. I am very bullish on the fact that if you're able to convince a nonprofit, and a lot of people talk about selling, why don't you go and try convincing a nonprofit to pay you money? Why? Because they're wedded to their cause. They're equating you against, hey, this is going to be the next 30-day meal for the kids I'm coaching on football. So are you worthy enough to earn this and then offer me something which I will pay you for long term? And for some, for some reason, for the past 4 years, we've been able to convince dozens of nonprofits to pay as well as be retained with us. And we put a bunch of case studies on our website. Sivananda Yoga Ashram, Seva Bharat, All India Disaster Management Institute, Can Kids. These are all renewed nonprofits who've been working with us year over year.
Right. And is it hard to get new clients because yeah, most of them do not have money? How do you actually filter for that? And how do you outreach to these folks and close them into clients?
Yeah, that's a great question. The sales cycle is typically long and hard, but I'm very clear that this is one of the most important offerings I can build in my lifetime. I've learned how large brands use digital and AI to scale smartly. You don't need you don't need $1 million now to build a $10 million brand. You know that. And I've seen that from the inside. How can a nonprofit use the same technology and the same systems to be able to scale? That's what I want to do. It's okay to take 3 months or 6 months, sometimes even longer. It's painful to go back, explain the same thing again and again. But I've come to realize that the cause is very worthy. And I'm very happy to go and spend as much time as required to convince a nonprofit that digitization will be their road to self-reliance. But just to answer your question on marketing, we recently created a point of view on the top 100 nonprofits in India. I'd love for you to have a look at the report. It's called State of Nonprofits Digitization Report, where we did very deep work. We looked at 20 separate metrics for every nonprofit. We analyzed the top 500 nonprofits in the country, and then we released that as a report. Yeah, thanks for bringing it up. So this is the report which got us a lot of coverage, and we speak about multiple nonprofits in every vertical and explain to them why digitization is a is a critical aspect which they need to start paying attention to. So if you go down the report, you will see a bunch of stats, and we also divided this by vertical. So I think this would be, I'd say, the most important stat which you see, um, which talks about the overall maturity of the nonprofit ecosystem in India. And then we cut it by vertical. So if you see a bunch of these nonprofits we work with, so we work with WWF, we work with Seva Bharat, we work with Museum of Art and Photography, among others. And then we put
Interesting.
recommendations for every sector. So this is a great mechanism for outreach. And a lot of nonprofits just come to us organically after reading this. And then the
Is
second
it
is word of
mostly
mouth.
centered in
You do
India
good.
also or worldwide?
This is
Like,
based entirely on nonprofits in India.
hmm, got it. Quite
But you'll
interesting.
find some global names. You'll see WWF, you'll see LPH.
Yeah, yeah. How do you quantify your impact? Like you said, this was the most important thing that you could do. I find that a lot of nonprofit work is like heart-centered and not so quantifying nowadays. Like, how do you measure your own impact?
Great question. And this is a question we get asked very often by nonprofits themselves, because every time we always take 1 year projects, and at the end of the year, we have to go back and say, this is the impact we created, and this is why we should renew. It's a typical cycle with nonprofits. Even when they go and fundraise, that's what they do. They always have to go back at the end of the year and show a M&E, a measurement and impact, a measurement and evaluation kind of an output. So in our case, because of the fact that we have not one but three levers, and I love the idea of leverage, so I've used the term lever very often. I'm reminded of that quote: "Give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum strong enough, and I will move the world." And I feel we have those levers in our hands now. So the first lever is Google Ad Grants. You get $10,000 of ad money, and this is very quantifiable. You're able to then very clearly correlate. $10,000 translates to visibility, visits, and conversions. So that's one aspect. The second is digital marketing, which again is quantifiable. We've now, I'll give you a couple of examples. For Sivananda Yoga Ashram, we've tripled the traffic. You can go read the case study on the website. For Seva Bharat, we brought 50 of their offline centers online by using Google My Business. And Google My Business now gives them data for calls and directions. So in the last 1 year, you have 80,000 people who've taken direction requests directly to the centers, or 25,000 people who've called them. So this is on the digital marketing side. And on the GenAI side, there's something phenomenal happening. You don't know the kind of use cases a nonprofit communications manager or a nonprofit leader will use GenAI for. And we've been surprised every time we've gone. So what we do with GenAI is we'll go and set up systems. So taking the frontier models, let's take Claude, let's take ChatGPT, let's take Gemini or Perplexity, and many of them come at a discount for nonprofits. Keep that in mind. We set them up, put in custom instructions, put in memory, give it context, teach it about the brand, create assistants, and teach the entire staff how to prime, how to prompt. and then we let them go. This has created so much impact that I'm, I can't express the kind of things we see. I'll give you a couple of examples. One nonprofit automated their entire annual report, which usually takes 3 months. They did it in 2 weeks because we had to guide them a little bit. Another nonprofit now, their communication is top notch. Why? Because there's no spelling mistake, there is no grammar mistake. And for startups, this may be status quo, but for nonprofits, this matters because they don't have time, they don't have the kind of talent. So at every level, we have clear metrics which we go back and demonstrate. We've increased your traffic and visibility, we've been able to grow your outreach, and we've been able to save you time and make your team more efficient. So there's no question then which remains. I'd say we are probably one of the most quantifiable investments for a nonprofit.
And if I'm a nonprofit, like I'd probably use cold email to reach out to uh, rich donators, or yeah, like offer them pro bono stuff. Most nonprofits are foreign to that. Then I would probably invest in Geo, right, to pop first in ChatGPT or something like that. What do you recommend for them to get more donations and favor growth and actually think like a startup?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So, as I mentioned, nonprofits have two primary goals. One is mission awareness. Let's say Charles today has learned about digital for nonprofits as a mission. The second goal is fundraising. Would Charles invest in digital for nonprofits or donate to digital for nonprofits if he is convinced about this cause? Assuming, let's say, digital for nonprofits is a nonprofit, just for the sake of this conversation. Now, on the fundraising side, one of the big aspects, Charles, is that globally, not just in India, globally, a lot of money is drying up. If you look at what's happening with US aid, if you look at what's happening geopolitically, a lot of countries are sort of looking more inward. So there's just lesser and lesser institutional money available. So when you say a rich donor, a rich fund, every nonprofit doesn't have access to that. But what they do have access to is retail fundraising. People like you and me who may not be averse to the idea of contributing 5% of our salary or 5% of our revenue or 5% of our profit to a specific nonprofit. Now, in this case, digital comes in handy. The moment you're able to build, and you're a master at cold email, you know this well. The moment you're able to build a strong first party data list, which most nonprofits, by the way, have. Why? Because they've existed for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. In startup terms, it's surprising to say that, oh, a 5-year-old startup is an old startup. In the nonprofit ecosystem, a 10-year-old nonprofit is still a young nonprofit. They're probably in their infancy and they're still figuring what they need to do. So the time scales are very different. So what I was coming to was on fundraising, building first-party databases, putting in payment gateways, setting up email workflows, and ensuring that the communication is more donor targeted. Everything is done digitally. Yes, we will never get into we will run an event for you. No, we are not an events agency. We are a digital enabler, and this is the route through which we enable fundraising.
Interesting. I saw that you're into yoga, you're into reading. What does a day in your life look like?
Could you say that question again? I didn't catch the first line.
Yeah, you're in yoga, you're into reading. What does that day in your life look like? And you're into working out, right? So tell me a bit more about that.
Right. I think I've been reading for as long as I can remember. I mean, I've stopped counting books now, but I can tell you that all around me, about 25% of my room is books, and then there are more which are stored in other places because I don't want to be storing books in my main room. And yoga happened in 2010, and personally think that was the most important decision I took in my life. I took a 40-day break from Google and I spent more than a month training to be a yoga teacher at a yoga ashram called Sivananda Yoga Ashram in Kerala. And that was, I would say, a very significant decision in my life. Since then, things have changed significantly, and I can only thank both books and yoga for what I have now. A typical day in my life, it's an interesting question you ask. It's a question I like to ask. A lot of people would love to hear from you as well as to what your day looks like. But I usually start by about 7:30. I would do a little bit of yoga. I prefer to do Surya Namaskar early in the mornings, and that's something which just gives me flexibility. Um, and then I get to work from about 9:30 to about 6. And in case I have the time, then I'd go work out. And then at night, I'd like to read. So again, I'm not getting into each and every detail of what I do during the day, but yoga and reading are an important part of my day. Somewhere or the other, want to fit them in. Currently, I don't have too much time to read because running two ventures, takes a lot of time and attention. But I don't sleep without reading at least 15 to 20 pages, no matter what I'm reading.
Interesting. Well, thanks for coming on, Abby. Where can people find out more about you and your company?
You can find out more about me on digitalfornonprofits.com. So that is the brand which works with nonprofits, and you can see what we do. The other place you can find me is on LinkedIn, Abhinav Chetan. And yeah, those are the two spaces where I'm most likely to respond immediately.
That was Abhinav Chetan and Charles Cormier for another